get to know each other, and so on. And then once we get into it, there's absolutely no problem with switching off camera. In fact, that's how we save energy and do something for the environment. So we'll wait for a few more minutes, but in the meantime, if you guys could just kind of put in the chat where you're dialing in from, because there's some people who are not in New York City, and anything else you'd like to share. We can use that time this way. Chapel Hill, nice. Salt Lake City, all right. We're extending our reach. Wonderful. Hi, Hope, how are you? Andrea, I thought you were moving to New York. Did I mix you up? No?
Yeah, no, I am. We're still in the process of that. We're still house hunting.
Okay. Jersey Gina, where you might be from. Maybe it's New Jersey. Okay, is 12:05, and with that, we're gonna get started. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to our second Lunch and Learn webinar, and welcome to Conscious Capitalism New York City. All right. So thanks for making time. We think this is a good idea how to spend your lunch break. And this is the second tenet of conscious capitalism that we're going to talk about today, which is stakeholder orientation, or as we sometimes also say, stakeholder integration. Now, to get us warmed up a little bit and to prove a certain point, on the next page, you see a young gentleman when he still had hair. And so here's my question. How many stakeholders do you think did I have at the age of 8? Yeah. So list as many as possible in the chat. An 8-year-old has stakeholders, right? So who are those stakeholders? Let's see if we can get to a deep list. Come on, don't be shy. My parents are a stakeholder. Teachers, that's right, Wissam. Parents, teachers, friends, pastor, yeah. Mom, dad, grandparents, aunts, uncles. Did anybody write siblings? Neighbors, that's right, yeah. So obviously, if we spend more time with this, we could go on and the list would get deeper. And the point is simply that stakeholder orientation isn't even something that was invented by the business world. Every person has stakeholders and has to manage relationships. So this is in a way just a natural extension of that. Okay. Now, before we go deeper into the subject, I wanted to quickly run through a couple of welcome pages. So sometimes people are new to the movement, and I'm not sure who is here, but so it's a movement, is an organization, and it's a business practice, and it's really about reshaping purpose, perception, practice of capitalism. Yeah. And the foundational belief is that business should be a force for good. And the bedrock of what we're trying to do are the 4 tenets. And so here they are. Next page. And these are the words of our co-founder, Raj. We're not going to go into deep detail, but what we're going to talk today about is the second one. Businesses should seek simultaneously deliver long-term benefits to all their stakeholders, right? And so we're going to look at the more structured approach on how to do that. Before we do that, just as a reminder, what are we focused on in New York City? So New York City is the birthplace of raw, traditional, brutal shareholder capitalism, is it not? And so in that sense, we want to be the antidote to that and actively shape a New York City business ecosystem where Deep values, human values like fairness, integrity, respect, and empathy are foundational, key to decision making, and considered the drivers of success. And you can see how this is tightly linked to the subject of today. And so, in that sense, we want to inject humanity into business, and that's how we're going to elevate business. Now, when it comes to the webinar series, this is from our community and for our community, not lectures, but participatory experiences. For those who've participated in the first one, there's actually a worksheet, and we're going to put you to work for a couple of minutes. And then there's a homework sheet that you can take on and continue afterwards, right? So we're going to do this quarterly. This is the second one for the 4 tenets. And then ad hoc, we may add up other subjects, and we're open to suggestions also what these could be, and even people who do this, okay? So let's get going with our subject. And so this one is unique in the sense that there's actually a starting point that is the opposite of what we want to do. And the starting point has an author. Yeah, Milton Friedman said the only corporate social responsibility a company has is to maximize its profits. And if you think about it, if you interviewed a lot of CEOs around the world, they would probably either say absolutely yes, or they would say like, no, 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 we need to take care of stakeholders. But then in reality, what they're spending 95% of their time with is this, right? And so it's a doctrine that we have to acknowledge exists, and we have to kind of go against, okay? So let's quickly look at stakeholder orientation, how we define it and who they are. So recognizing that the interdependent nature of life and the human foundation of business, a business needs to create value with and for its various stakeholders. And so here are 6 of the most important groups, but this is also not an exhaustive list, right? So we are going to ask you to think deeper. And of course, each of these then has subcategories, but then there's also other categories. These are sort of the 6 big ones, if you will. And the good news is there's people who've also laid the theoretical foundations of what we're trying to do. And ironically, the name is very similar. This gentleman is called Freeman. And he said every business creates and sometimes destroys values for customers, suppliers, employees, communities, and financiers. The task is to create as much value as possible for stakeholders without resorting to trade-offs. And that's really the tension here, right? The trade-offs. So great companies endure because they manage to get all the stakeholder interests aligned. That is sort of what we're trying to do here. And we'll take a look at how to get there. Now, here's an example where it shows that even a very big company in a very, very competitive environment can do this. And of course, it starts with the leaders, and it gets you back to the 4 tenets being very tightly linked to each other, right? So the co-founder of Southwest Airlines said the business of business is people. And so he actually has a whole logic chain here. And that is, if you treat your employees right, guess what? Your company, your customers will feel taken care of. They will come back, and that will in turn make the shareholders happy, right? It's a sort of simple logic chain, and you can see here a couple on the post-its. You can see a couple of their principles, of their values, and even their purpose. And what's very powerful about this example is that this is not some NGO or some SME. No, this is a big, well-known company, and they've been able to actually pull through with these values for a very long time and also be profitable for a very long time. In fact, they've been profitable for 47 years in a row, all the way up to COVID. And that shows that there's a strong link between stakeholder orientation and shareholder outcomes. Kathy?
There we go. Sorry about that. Thanks so much, KP. You know, there is another gentleman, I don't know how many of you have heard of Ken Blanchard, and he talks about the leadership profit chain as well. right? And it's really, if you focus on your purpose, your people, and your customers, that's when the profits will follow, as KP was saying. And that is proven with the Southwest Airlines, with Herb and what he's doing, and others. And, this virtuous cycle, and I use this a lot when I'm working with different clients, but it's only a couple of the stakeholders, but imagine you put all of them in, right? So when you have excited employees, they want to stay. So that increases your retention rates. The cost of one employee leaving is 33% of their salaries. So I often have to talk to CEOs and say, well, there is a profit piece of this, and why you want to retain your clients. When your employees are more productive, that drives more productivity, more money for the company as well. You drive innovation when they're elevated as an organization, and then your happy people are treating your customers better, and your customers then are renewing, they're buying more, and they're referring you to others. That's how the profit comes into play. So it has been proven that there is profitability tied at the back end of this, but focusing on all your stakeholders first and foremost is so powerful, and it is a business imperative. That's what we truly believe. And I don't know how many of you have looked at the Conscious Capitalism field guide, but how we're putting a lot of this together is using that field guide. And in the guide, there is actually an assessment, and we call it the North Star, right? If you look at the ideal state around what does it mean to really be oriented around your stakeholders, there's a series of questions that you can ask. If we just highlight a couple of them, are you actively giving stakeholders a voice in decisions, right? So that this is not just the ivory tower of decisions being made in isolation. Are you tracking your stakeholders' well-being with metrics that actually matter? Are you building the long-term relationships that's going to build trust, not just reacting when there's an issue, but having people want to be part of your organization, want to stay, continue to add on? So when we look at this assessment, if you scored a 5 across all of these, then you'd really be operating in full alignment with what strong stakeholder orientation is. And that's when others would be leaning from you. But let's be honest, none of us are perfect. And as we're building our companies, we're doing the best we can. But having this assessment is where you can see where you're strong and where you have room to grow. So we're going to provide a handout in a couple of minutes, and we actually have this assessment as part of the handout, so you can look at it and assess where you are within your organization, whether you're the CEO of an organization or even among your team, right? We challenge everyone to think about not just at a CEO level, but every leader should be thinking about their team, their stakeholders, and how this all applies. And this isn't a checklist necessarily, it's really a mindset. And it sets the stage for everything that we're going to talk about as we go forward. And before we zoom into each of the different categories of stakeholders, ecosystem, it's about having a mindset of all of this, right? And a conscious business isn't a machine. It's a living, breathing organism. And every stakeholder really does play a role. And everybody is interconnected. And it's all interdependent. And so when we focus on the whole system, that's when everyone will benefit. The customers, the employees, the investors, suppliers, right? The environment, everyone. And it's not just a win-win, it's a win-win-win. And that's what we want to do. We want to go and we want to have to give, right? So we need to constantly be thinking of everyone and shift to how can we contribute to this? How can we take everyone into consideration and help drive that inclusion and that engagement across the board? Any questions before we get started? Because I'm going to dive into each one of the categories now of stakeholders. All right. So first and foremost, there's the employees, right? It's about taking care of the people so they can take care of the business. And when we are having orientation around all of our stakeholders, we need to think about our employees are not just resources. They're people with the dreams, families, challenges, and potential. And so we need to challenge ourselves and make sure and ask ourselves, are we treating our employees as whole people? Are we giving them opportunities to grow, or are we just giving them tasks to complete? And then what systems do we have in place to help them survive? So when we think about stakeholder orientation, we're looking at bringing in each stakeholder and engaging them how we need to. Think about how do we give to them? And it goes back to that we need to give, right? They want purpose. Employees want to know where we're going, why we're going. They want to be inspired. So we want to think about the employees on what do they need so that they can feel included, they can have the clarity, and they're connected. Because let's be honest, when we're connected as employees, we want to give more, right? It's going that extra effort and that extra mile, as opposed to just doing the bare minimum. So oftentimes, we're used to saying, okay, yeah, we definitely think about our employees. Next, we have the customers, right? This is the reason businesses exist. Without customers, we don't have a business. And so our purpose really needs to start with the people that we serve. And serving our customers means that we're constantly educating them, empowering them, and building trust. And when you build trust, they become part of your ecosystem. That's when they want to do more. They want to renew with you. If you're in a SaaS business, you want to make sure they're constantly getting value. We want them to buy more. We want them to refer us. And so we have to ask ourselves, are we doing what's best for the customer? Or are we simply doing what's easiest for us? And are we exploiting vulnerabilities, or are we standing behind our offerings with integrity? I had the opportunity to work at HP and work with Meg Whitman, and she would tell the stories where she had to make some really tough decisions as times where the product was not ready or the product wasn't doing well. And you could simply say, oh, I hope no one notices. I don't need to worry about it. But when you bring your integrity to the table, you will say, this isn't working. There is an issue, having a recall. We make mistakes, and we have to treat our customers with that integrity and make sure that we're thinking about how they fit into this whole thing and that we're doing what's responsible and what's necessary. Oftentimes people are like, yep, that feels comfortable. My employees, my customers, that's why I'm in business. But it's also about our suppliers, right? And it's not about just trying to get the best deal from our suppliers. A conscious business is thinking about how do we build mutual growth and shared prosperity. When we work with our customers or with our suppliers, it should be a give and take, right? We want to be fair and transparent. We want to support each other. And so that's where we need to think about, are we including our suppliers in our strategic thinking? Do we make sudden decisions that might harm them? And to stop there and say, okay, how do we include them? So I have in my organization, some of my suppliers are contractors. A lot of times people say, well, they're on the external side. I don't need to include them. But I'll bring them into a meeting every quarter and say, here's exactly what's going on. Here's what our goals are. Here's what we're doing. And they want to engage, right? They want to help. And it's not about trying to get the best margin. It's how do you include them? And it's fascinating when you do bring everyone in because they want to help, right? They want to be part of it. And you create that ecosystem of everyone creating that win-win-win scenario. Let's not forget, investors are important, right? These are still the stewards of financial capital and long-term wealth and value, right? Without thinking about this, we're not going to succeed, right? So we want to make sure we're transparent about what the purpose is, the risks, and the plans. It's about being that good steward of financial capital. So conscious leaders, we're looking at how to be transparent, but also courageous, right? Are we aligned on what long-term value really looks like? Or are we sacrificing one stakeholder group or the other? And so when we can take that moment and look at investors as a strategic partner that we're working with and aligning, then it helps drive progress forward and it helps bring in the rest of the ecosystem. Okay, a couple more that are really important as well. It's the communities, right? Because we're building businesses and communities where we live and we work. And our community is impacted by our presence of the company. And it can be both positively and negatively. So when we can create opportunities for those that are in the community, it's an opportunity to stay committed. And so we want to be asking ourselves that questions. Are we creating a community that's going to help the community survive? Right? It's a societal responsibility that we have. I always love some of the stories from Ford when he was building his business. He always wanted to make sure that his employees could afford the cars, right, that they were purchasing. And there's another, I don't know if anyone's ever read the book, The CEO and the Monk. And it was the CEO that ran P&G or Lilco on Long Island. They did a lot of different mergers. But it talks about how it's family, right? And how we have to bring everyone together because your employees are the ones living in your community, and your communities are the ones that can support the business. So it is a two-way street that we need to always be considering. And then you have the environment, right? So how do we protect the planet that makes all of the business possible? And we need to be the environmental stewards to this, and it's no longer optional, right? Are we using our platform to promote sustainability? Are we doing the right things, not just the easy things? And it's oftentimes that we have to make the hard decisions, but that's what a conscious business is all about. And we need to think about and measure our impact on our operations beyond just compliance. So with that, and we're going to start to get into the exercise here, but it's one knowing who are all the stakeholders are, right? And there's different levels. So, a lot of who we just spoke to in the categories we looked at are those that are in your inner circle of stakeholders, right? Those that you're going to interact with regularly, you're deeply integrated in your business and their business, the employees, the customers, et cetera. But you also want to make sure you're thinking about the bigger web of influence as well, and the outer circle. And these can include groups like regulators, activists, competitors, and others that you may not interact with directly, but they can shape your outcomes. So even if they're not sitting at your table, they will influence your decisions, your brand, and even your risk. And so as you're looking at stakeholder orientation, it's to really expand your entire lens. And then when you look in that inner circle, start to ask yourself, who else? Are there smaller segments that we need to think about within there? How do we group different stakeholders based on how you engage with them? How do we listen to silent stakeholders, the ones who don't necessarily raise their hands? So for example, when we talk about employees, it doesn't just mean your full-time employees. It could mean your contractors. It could mean exempt and non-exempt or hourly employees. For suppliers, you have strategic partners and you have transactional vendors. Your community, you have local leaders and the more headlines that are impacting you. So the opportunity here is to map out your stakeholders so that you can lead with more clarity. And it's not, otherwise, if we don't have this clarity and we don't sit down in the time of calm, we find ourselves reacting to the problems when they arise. And the goal is to have a plan and have everyone included so that we're working together. So I wanted to bring up a map of, this is Whole Foods and their stakeholder orientation in action. So, number one step is really defining who are all your different stakeholders. But it's also then thinking about how you tie this to your purpose. So our first session where we talked about purpose, you need to know why you exist as a business. So for Whole Foods, it's to satisfy and delight their customers. But you notice they're achieving that not just through the products, it's through the relationships. And Whole Foods looks at this as delivering on its mission to look at the full stakeholder ecosystem, right? So if you look at team member happiness, right, over here on the right-hand side, it's not just a feel-good initiative. It's going to be what drives their innovation, their job satisfaction, and ultimately better service. Then they look at their partnerships with vendors and suppliers, making sure they're satisfying and delighting their customers, motivating their investors, and making sure their community environments are responsive. So each stakeholder group is not linear, right? This creates your ecosystem and this interdependent system. If you look on the outside, the blue box here, they're thinking about outcomes, thinking about that stakeholder alignment when it's in place, because now they have motivated team members, they have the innovation, they have sales growth, they have corporate citizenship. So those are the outcomes. And that's how you drive the purpose of your business outwards. And there's no right way to build the stakeholder map. But the idea is to start somewhere and start to build that map so you understand who are all of my stakeholders and what are their needs and how do I bring them into the process and what we're doing. So this turns us over to the exercise now, where we want to look at, have each one of you pull this down and look for your own organization and map out your stakeholder ecosystem. And this is a time to reflect, right? And walk through, who do I have more than just the employees? Do I have different segmentations on customers? Are there different elements for the environment? And also think about your outer circle and others. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we are going to put in the chat the document, and let's see if I can do this in real time. Let's go to my computer. There we go. So you should be seeing a PowerPoint. This has 4 different pages on it. It has that assessment that we talked about. It also, and I think it's on page 3 of the document. You will see this worksheet like this. Let me know if you're folks are able to download it. Anyone having trouble? Andrea got it. Thank you. I love feedback. I appreciate it. All right. So I'm going to set the timer here just for 5 minutes to give you a chance to.
You didn't ask Grammy? I'm working. I'll text her.
All right. So we'll start the timer and take a moment to think about it. And what we'd love to hear from you, we're going to ask each of you to give your insights. What are some different groups that you came up? Is there anyone that's not on this, one of the standard categories? Who's in your outer circle? What's some breakdowns that you have?
Hmm. Mm, 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 mm.
How's everyone doing? Anyone need more time?
Mm.
If anyone wants to start dropping a couple in the chat that might be out of the box, that'd be great. I'll give you another minute.
Well, let's talk. I think that's the most powerful. And I'll just share something, to get us started, and then that gives people another minute to gather their thoughts, because I did this exercise for the Conscious Capitalism New York City organization, if you will. And my mind went into two places. One is, how can I take community members, which is a key stakeholder, obviously, and how I can further dissect it, right? And I came up with core members. We sometimes refer to them as ambassadors. And is Hope still there? Yeah, so Hope is on that list. Then we have people here on the line who are out of towners, right? So that's a different kind of community member. And then we also have community members that we call lapsed community members. They engaged with the chapter a couple of years ago, but not now anymore. So that's a whole different level, right? So you can see how you can take what looks like one group community members and kind of dissect them. And my other thought, which I didn't get very far, was government. Yeah, New York City government entities. We haven't really engaged with them yet. Is not my area of expertise, but that's a potential outer circle stakeholder who potentially could be helpful, right? So that's something to think more about. Anyway, so I wanted to share that to get us started. Who wants to go next?
So I can go next as I think about our company, United Rentals, which is a construction equipment rental company. One thing that comes to mind is the attention they give to employees, but not just employees, talking about the outer circle, about employee families. And one of the initiatives is kind of a disaster fund that has been created that is managed by employee committees. And it's a rotating thing, and then people contribute to it. Every person in the close to 30,000 employees can put whatever they want out of their paychecks. You can decide what amount goes to that. And there's a committee that decides which employee families that have been affected by, could be a personal tragedy or a disaster, they want to fund. So I thought that was a very beautiful initiative from the company to extend beyond the specific employees to the families of the employees as well.
I love that, Wissam. Thank you for sharing that. Great. Anyone else? Andrea?
Yeah, there were a couple of groups that I thought about. One was suppliers, and this was very near and dear to my heart in the last couple of weeks. I was having some issues with actually a time machine. I'm backing up my data on my computer. And specifically, I don't on a regular basis work with a technology group for my IT needs. I'm pretty much self-service. However, I really needed to rely on their expertise. And it was interesting. I wound up working with a gentleman over the course of, with Apple, one of their subject matter experts, over the course of a week and a half. And the relationship and the bond that I developed with him, I swear, got me to the other side of the hurdle I was facing. I mean, I literally thought I was losing all my data. I mean, like all of my historical data. And had it not been in terms of, people might call up their tech support suppliers and call them up and saying, I'm having a problem with this, I'm having a problem with that. And they don't give much to nurturing the relationship with the individual they're talking to over the phone. But I see those relationships as being extremely important. In fact, I find it really surprising. I don't know if there's any other Apple users on this call today, but Apple now has a recording when you call their tech support. They remind you to be kind. They remind you to be kind to the Apple expert that will be helping you. And I think to myself, oh my God, you have to remind somebody to be kind to someone who's actually going to help you. I mean, it's just, it blows me away. But that is, in the case of a supplier, I never thought about them that way, but they saved my life. Literally, they saved my life and they saved my business as a result of that. And the other one I would just add is I'm a solo practitioner. I'm a coach and a consultant. And specifically, I don't have any employees. However, I do, when I think about who is my community, what would be employees, I think about thought partners. I think about organizations, professional organizations that I partner with. There happens to be a group of colleagues who kind of do what I do. We're all situated in different parts of the world. We get together and we're in the process of building a product together, and so those are an extension. That's my employee base of sorts. So this was a wonderful exercise for me. Thank you.
And
Great.
if I may add, this it shows that it's worthy to do even if you're a sole practitioner or a solopreneur, And of course, it gets more complex as the company gets bigger. Fantastic.
Great. Anybody else want to share? Bernard? Yep.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks. Call me Bern for short. What I see here is a very intelligent, comprehensive application for a typical business. My business is not exactly typical. There's a lot of common intersects between what I'm doing and what you have there, obviously. But my thing is a little bit different. I'm an emerging creative, an academic author who sidelines as a composer lyricist. I have everything needed to be successful, except that I'm undercapitalized and I need to be recognized. I am waiting for one shoe to drop. Just an example on the music side of it. You can go to my website and you can see Lin-Manuel Miranda, the toast of Broadway. Mr. Hamilton himself says, Mr. Bernard, thank you for such a wonderful rendition of our national anthem, etc., etc. You'd think with this, people would be banging down my door, money hand over fist. No, like everybody else, you got to find an agent, get discovered, et cetera, et cetera. So that is something that I have figured out how to overcome that, but it takes time. And when you have a lack of resources, it goes slower, but you can connect the dots. You can determine for yourself whether or not my work is quality and whether or not uh, it would succeed commercially, although those are not necessarily automatic things. More importantly, that's just sort of a way to start to get some money. And the thrust of what I really do with my life is I have theories on how to restructure the international monetary system, which makes capitalism more efficient, more productive, and even altruistic as a result of that. This is not the time to get up on a soapbox and lecture to you all about how that happens, but I would love to discuss that more fully with everybody at the appropriate time and place. The other thing that is important, which is the other thing, is a theory on how to create affordable housing. And you see, this is very applicable to what we're talking about today. You started off with Milton Friedman, and he is one of the champions of the hard right or hard wrong, laissez-faire, let whatever happens, happens, do not interfere under any circumstance. That's one school of thought. Then you have people saying, let's have active intervention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's have socialism. And socialism is a very broad umbrella as to what it's viewed as being defined as. What's the socialism in one part of the world is not socialism in another part of the world, and so on and so on. My theory is we need to, in the case of the international monetary system, it's not how much money there is and where it is and who has it, quantitative concentration. It is qualitative application, the net of how well money is used. And that is the key to that. And that is also the key in parallel to affordable housing.
Yeah,
So,
so Vern, I really appreciate all that you're sharing, and you have a lot of greatness, but I think in the interest of time, and I apologize, but we need to
no, that's
wrap up
fine.
here.
That's fine.
So
That's fine.
thanks so much.
That's fine.
All right, so from a wrap up with as related to this exercise, right? Really looking at your stakeholders. We did one step, just being able to identify who those folks are in those gray boxes. But you'll notice on the next page in that PowerPoint, it goes to the next step to allow you to go even further, right? What are their needs? What do we have to think about when we're looking at the stakeholder engagement, and how can we meet everyone's needs when we're thinking about it? And so that's why we wanted to just make sure you had this handout as well, because this is a continuous process. You'll notice at the center of this sheet is purpose. And that purpose, when you have that purpose, that's what allows you to align with your stakeholders. You know, Andrea, as you shared with, your suppliers, when people know what you're doing, why you're doing it, you're doing it, they want to get in your ecosystem. They want to help. They want to be part of it. And that's the more we can do, is to start with the purpose, then know who we're impacting, how we're impacting, and why it matters. We bring them in so that we're all on this journey to do good and to change where we are as as organizations, as a society, etc. So, bottom line in all of this is a stakeholder approach is how shareholders will gain the most. So, really thinking about everyone in what we're doing. So, with that, KP, let me hand it back over to you as far as next steps and get everyone excited about how else they can join in.
Yeah, of course. So first of all, to Kathy's point, we want this exercise to continue. So please download the worksheet and then spend more time with that. We have a couple of ways to engage, whether you're in New York or not. We'll put everybody who registered on our monthly newsletter. Obviously, we'd like you to engage on LinkedIn with us. And if you're in New York, a highlight for the rest of the year is on November 19. And in fact, on the next page, if you're in New York, please take your camera out. This is the link to the registration. We will talk about an incredibly important subject, which is AI. And in fact, we're going to go beyond the traditional ways how people approach AI ethics and share a very new and visionary approach with our speaker. And I find the title very intriguing, Can I Stay in Love with Life? Because that is what it's all about in the end. So if you're in New York, please join us. And with that, I wanted to thank everybody for participating. And more to come. Obviously, we're going to continue the series in January. There's going to be the third tenet, which is going to be conscious leadership, and is going to have a similar format. At the same time, if you have comments or feedback on the format and suggestions, please reach out to us, and then we can always look how to do these even more effectively. Thank you so much, everybody, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
KP, I'm sorry, KE, Kathy, I'm going to leave you a short message.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. I apologize, but I have to run to another meeting.
No problem. Can you send me your email and I'll send it to you by email? That'd be easier.
Sure.
Okay. Burnmeister@burnmeister.com is how to send it to me. BERN.
We have your email. Don't worry.
Oh, good.
We'll
Okay.
get in touch.
Burnmeister@burnmeister.com. Thank you, Kathy.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the drop off is more than 50.